there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Sam, and I moderate these presentations. In just a second, we're going to be joined by Wesley Boudreau, one of our senior financial advisors who focuses on AT&T retirement. He will be dropping in to give a presentation on how you can cut your costs when retiring from AT&T when it comes to your healthcare concerns. He'll also answer just a couple questions. I apologize in advance. We don't always have time to answer everyone's questions live, but I will make sure to field those to another AT&T focused financial advisor who can answer them with you either through phone or email after the presentation. As a quick reminder, we are not affiliated nor endorsed whatsoever by AT&T. We are a completely independent group of financial advisors, so please keep that in mind as you're listening along. Throughout Wesley's presentation, you will find some links popping up on your screen. Those are going to be from me. They will guide you to various resources we have available, one of which is simply a link to book yourself a free 15-minute consultation with one of our AT&T focused financial advisors. Other links may lead you to our YouTube and our LinkedIn where you can follow us. We post tons of AT&T related content weekly, and we really think you'd get some value out of it if you considered giving us a follow. And now, without further ado, we're going to jump right into it with Wesley Boudreau.
All right, thank you very much, Samantha, for that introduction. And like she said today, we're going to be talking about healthcare and how it relates to AT&T retirees, especially those that are transitioning into retirement. Unfortunately, the last decade or so has brought a lot of changes to the benefits. Obviously, a reduction in benefits, what's going to be available to you post-retirement. But we'll dig into those. We'll talk about some alternative options, talk about Medicare, what that means when you become eligible at age 65, and really ultimately look at hopefully schedule a meeting. That's the best way to kind of dig into your personal situation to see where you stand on some of these different options. Now, even though we've worked extensively with AT&T for many years, doesn't mean we're endorsed or employed. We're employed by AT&T. But rest assured, all of our advisors that focus on AT&T have dealt with these plans for quite a while and can help you through this process if you need help on it. So, first and foremost, one of the biggest risks that we see, or what people tell us and tell surveys, is their number one concern in retirement is running out of money. Obviously, that makes sense. We work our entire careers saving money in order to have that for distribution periods. We question the solvency of Social Security. We question, have we saved enough? How much is enough? A lot of people ask that. A lot of people that have high expenses and high income may not be able to retire, but some people with lower income and lower expenses can retire. So it's really important to run a cash flow analysis, which we'll talk about later in the webinar to dig into that. But one of the biggest culprits there is going to be healthcare and how much that's going to cost. A lot of times we talk about running these cash flow reports and the financial plan, and we talk about the fact that most retirees do spend more money first 10, 15, maybe 20 years because those are the go-go years. You're traveling, doing things like that, spending more money. But later in life, we tend to slow down. We've got our property, got our furniture, got our clothing. Mostly, it's usually kind of food and healthcare. But the biggest question is healthcare. How much is that actually going to cost us? And obviously, with longevity, people are living longer, so that's more years to potentially be on the hook for some of those healthcare costs. So, what do people think it costs for healthcare? Well, there's a lot of different surveys that have been out there, and we'll get into those in just a moment. But some of the biggest things to focus on here for AT&T are the changes we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years. And I know everybody that is an AT&T employee, especially those that are close to retirement, has kind of looked at some of these updates as they come out year by year and kind of reviewed the options they have, whether or not it makes sense to retire early, keep some of the retiree medical benefits, or whether it makes sense to keep working and keep that income. But unfortunately, a lot of times what we've seen is, excuse me, there's not many choices to have to worry about anymore going forward because the last couple of years we've seen cut after cut after cut in the retiree medical benefits. So some of the things that we've seen individuals lose is the subsidies for the subsidized medical plan. So you have that lower cost medical plan post retirement. Some of the Medicare supplement payments that are available out there as well. But for a lack of better terms, moving forward here in 2025 and beyond, if you're retiring from AT&T, you're fairly on your own. You do have some options, but it's going to cost you. And we'll go into some of those different options, whether it means sticking with AT&T or looking at other choices. So as far as healthcare and how it relates to those of you that are transitioning to retirement, we're going to cover a couple things. The expected costs, as I kind of got a little bit ahead of myself in that last slide, talking about some of those costs, but we'll go into those in more detail. We'll talk about your options before age 65 when you become Medicare eligible, and some different health insurance options or choices you have as an AT&T retiree post-retirement as well. So again, I talked about the cost. A lot of times it's going to depend upon who you are and how healthy you are. You may be somebody who's lucky enough to be very healthy, have a good health history in your family, and not necessarily need to see a doctor. You eat healthy. It may not cost you much at all. But for most of us, it's going to cost us. It's going to cost us a little bit more than what we expect. Fidelity does a survey every year, and the last one we have posted, the average person thought it's going to cost them about $41,000 or so in medical expenses, and that fell pretty far short. When you look at a couple that's retiring age 65, it's about a little bit over $250,000 short. About $274,000 more is expected to be paid over their lifetime. That study actually shows that a 65-year-old couple retiring in good health is to expect to pay about $315,000 or more in health insurance or healthcare cost over the course of their retirement or the rest of their lives. And unfortunately, that's rising at a higher rate than our typical inflationary standpoints. That's about 5% over the last year. Years past, it was been a little bit higher, so hopefully we're getting some of this in control. But obviously, we don't know the answer to how much am I going to spend. There's a number of different calculators out there through Fidelity, Vanguard, other sources where you can go and kind of run an estimate for yourself. And we can look at budgeting that and helping you run a cash flow analysis in order to kind of dig into that yourself. So also some of the rising costs we've seen over the last couple of years is going to be price of drugs. Definitely one that's been skyrocketing over the last couple of years and something that we're trying to get, or the government's trying to get in check because again, a lot of other countries spend a lot less than what we do. So hopefully we can get that reeled in a little bit. But if we look at just here in 2025 alone, they've had increase on 575 different medications, ranging from diabetes, HIV, cancer treatment, and things of that nature. That's been about a 4% increase. If we look over last year, it was a little bit over a 5.6% increase on over 900 different drugs there as well. So again, depending upon your health situation, there's overall rising cost across the board. But again, prescription drugs become a pretty heavy one, especially prior to Medicare. Once you get on Medicare, that does soften the blow a little bit there for you. As far as some alternatives to those of you that are looking at retiring before age 65 from AT&T, and I'd say it's a pretty vast majority of individuals, whether it be your own decision or whether it be a lot of the return to office situations or different divisions getting cut. Unfortunately, a lot of you are leaving the company prior to age 65. So, a couple options you have. Option one is going to be the AT&T unsubsidized plan. So again, this is just you essentially keeping your plan, but paying full boat for that. And when I say full boat, it's a little bit more than we have here. In some cases, depending upon your tier, and that's all going to depend upon your legacy. And we don't have control over that. You have to check with AT&T when you run that quote. But in some cases, we're looking at closer to $1,000 and up for an individual, $1,600 and up for a significant other, and even higher when you factor in families. Cobra is going to be the ability to extend your health care for up to 18 months if you were to get cut or leave AT&T. So that's something to kind of review side by side, whether or not it makes sense to look at Cobra or whether it makes sense to look at the unsubsidized AT&T retiree medical benefits. And a lot of that's going to depend upon what your next step is. Are you fully retired? Are you just transitioning to another job? Are you going to work part time? And so some of those other options you can look at if you're not able or don't want to spend the money on the first two is maybe your spouse is still working. Hopefully he or she has got a decent healthcare plan and you can go on that. It may be that you decide to go out and find a new job yourself and look at getting on that health insurance because it's better than the Affordable Care Act or the Healthcare Exchange, which is the fifth choice in this list. So if you don't have any of those options, or if you run the reviews and this comes out better, you can actually go to the state exchange, to the healthcare exchange, and figure out, okay, what is my cost going to be? Whether I look at the gold, the silver, the bronze plan, look at the different deduction options, things like that, based upon my income. It may end up coming out cheaper than the AT&T unsubsidized plan, and probably definitely cheaper than Cobra, but it's all going to depend upon your income. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. So, as far as the Affordable Care Act and the different options you have there, again, these are all going to be state run. So every state's a little bit different from state to state. There are some states that have multiple choices. Some only have one option for you. So you could be very limited there. And a lot of those states have increased their cost over the years. So some have a higher cost than others. So again, it's something to review. And this is something you go and run there and do a quote whenever you want. There's different options as far as signing up. You've got the open enrollment, which is towards the end of the year. But again, if you were, let's say, for instance, retiring or leaving AT&T in June, that's a life change. You can go in there and actually run that and do that as well. And again, it's going to be dependent upon what your income is or what your expected income is going to be. So you might make $150,000 a year right now, but if you're retiring and expecting to, only clear, 60,000 between, maybe your spouse working and Social Security or something like that, then you might be in a lower bracket as far as the supplements they give you for the Affordable Care Act, and so it may come out pretty cheap. And so that's something to kind of run those quotes. We can kind of run through those with you as well. But it's important to review all those options that you have side by side. As far as running those, like I mentioned before, the best way to do this is running a cash flow analysis, really a financial plan. If you can spend about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes with us gathering some data, we can run a full report for you, kind of tying in your 401k, your pension plan, your retirement spending, the healthcare medical options, healthcare costs. We can run various scenarios to show you. We run various scenarios to show you what that looks like and how it plays out, not just now, but the next 20, 30, 40 years down the road as well. There's a QR code up there. I'll keep up for just one more second. I think we'll have it at the end of the slide as well. But if you want to get in there and actually run that cash flow analysis or set up an appointment with us, you can actually do that as well. And then as far as the once you do turn 65, that's when things get a little bit easier for you. That's when you become Medicare eligible. You need to actually apply for that within 3 months of turning 65 to 3 months after. Very important to get that taken care of. Overall, generally speaking, it's going to lower your cost. That's going to be cheaper than the AT&T unsubsidized, obviously Cobra, cheaper than Affordable Care Act, probably cheaper than a spouse's health care plan. Typically better benefits and guarantees for about 80% of your medical expenses. So again, it's very important to kind of look into this. If you have any questions on there, we can dig into them in more detail. But in addition to the basic Medicare, there's different options you have as far as whether it be attacking on Medigap or whether it's actually looking at Medicare Advantage, which kind of gives you a all-encompassing plan. So the best way to kind of review these kind of side by side would be maybe think about Medigap adding different standalone options as having a PPO versus an HMO with the Medicare Advantage type plan. So one of the risks there is with the Medicare Advantage, you actually lose Medicare. It's a consolidated plan, if you would, that gives you access to specific doctors, more limited choices, but it also limited cost or reduced cost. The Medicare with Medigap options, adding different levels, is going to be a little bit more costly. But again, it gives you more flexibility, more doctors to choose from, allows you to keep that Medicare so you're not having to make any changes in there as well. So again, very important to kind of review those, talk with us or talk with a Medicare specialist on that as well. As far as the cost, Medicare has been going up, obviously, the out-of-pocket cost, and it all depends upon what you're actually using. Prescription costs go up a little bit more than hospital stays and things like that. But on average, looking at about 2.7% bump in cost for 2025. Again, you don't have any control over this, so we're just giving you this information, but it is kind of in line with inflation. Not It's not astronomical compared to overall cost across the board. And then one of the biggest things to be aware of, a lot of individuals aren't aware of, is the IRMA tax or IRMA fees, if you would, or higher premiums that you're going to have for supplemental Medicare. And what that means is if you have an income that for individual that's higher than $106,000 or higher than 212,000 for a joint, you're going to be looking at paying a higher premium on your Medicare Part B and Medicare Part D than what you otherwise would. So it's very important to understand this. And keep in mind, again, what's going to happen is they base this off of your prior 2 years. So let's say if I'm working at AT&T and my spouse is working and maybe combined we make $250,000 in 2025, and let's say I'm 64, what that means is, or let's say I'm 63, that means is in 2 years, they're going to use those numbers to determine how much I'm paying for Medicare Part B and D. And so I could be paying a little bit more based upon that. Now, however, since you're now retired, it is something you can go in there. It's a little tedious, but you can go in there and actually correct that and get that updated to reflect your current income, so you can get that back down. But let's take a look at some of those different the schedule, if you would. I'm going to put my glasses on to see some of this, but ultimately the base is going to be that 185,000, or should be $185 a month on there, and no Medicare Part D supplement premiums. But let's look at that second, excuse me, the third one down there. Let's say a couple that's over 266,000 are now at 370 and 30 another 35. So that's actually going to be paying, close to about $200, about $230 more a month for medical expenses because you had that higher income. And that may not be just because you had a higher income. It may be that you decided to do a Roth conversion, and maybe your advisor you're working with or you're doing it yourself didn't understand that. So you could maybe have only $100,000 of income, but maybe you did a $150,000 Roth conversion. So now it looks like you have 250. Now you're paying that extra $200+ a month or so. So let's say another $2,400 a year for Medicare Part B and D combined for that year. So it's important to understand that, kind of think of it as an additional tax, if you would. We do a lot of Roth conversion strategies with the retirement group and wealth enhancement group. So definitely review that with us ahead of time to see if you fall into this standpoint. Let's look at an example. Bob and Jane in this example, Bob's 65. So Medicare eligible finally, and Jane in this case a little bit younger at 62. Their combined income right at that level 212. So for that standpoint, Bob's not having to pay a higher premium. Oh, sorry, this keeps doing this. He's not having to pay that higher premium in this case, but his wife is not Medicare eligible yet, and so she's on the exchange, and because of her age and everything, she's looking at $1,200 a month. So combined, about $1,500 a month there. If we fast forward, or let's say if they went $1 over, now Bob's paying a little bit higher premium for Medicare Part B and D. If we fast forward to where Jane in this case is Medicare eligible, that obviously drops her expenses. It could also be that their income were lower, then she's going to have um, uh, some credits in the Affordable Care Act, and it's not going to be that full $1,200 a month. That might be cheaper as well. And then as far as the premiums in 2025, just kind of give you a glance at how those have increased. Not everywhere has been increasing, but again, in some cases, a lot of states have gone up in that 7+% range, some in double digits. You can see here Vermont, New York, Alaska, North Dakota, Utah. And again, keep in mind, like I said, some of these different states have choices, some don't have choices. So again, you're kind of limited to what they have there, but it's really important to review that side by side with those other choices we talked about for options prior to Medicare eligibility. And then the cost of expenses I mentioned in that example, we did Bob, I think Bob and Jane, we saw how expensive hers was. This gives you an example. I'm actually at that point where mid 40s where it's starting to get more and more expensive. I apologize, something's wrong with my mouse here. Where it's starting to get more and more expensive. So you can see the older you get, obviously it makes sense because there's more susceptible to healthcare needs. It's going to get more expensive for you over time. And then as far as kind of tying all this together, again, a quick reminder who the retirement group is. We've worked extensively with AT&T for about 30 years or so, but we are a group of investment advisories, excuse me, an investment advisory firm that employs investment advisor specialists that focus on working with corporate employees, helping them transition into retirement. And like I said, we work with Fortune 500 companies, AT&T being one of the ones we started with over 30 years ago. That allows our focus advisors to have a deeper understanding of your benefits plans, your pension, your 401k, healthcare, retiree medical benefits, life insurance continuation, things like that. We do provide a complimentary cash flow analysis. I talked about that before. It's important to schedule some time, go through that to see how all these options play out in your specific situation. And we do have offices throughout the United States. So if you need to sit down with somebody face to face, rest assured we can take care of that and accommodate you with that as well. And then I'll keep this on here, but different ways to contact us: 800-900-5867. You can email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. There's a couple QR codes on here if you'd like to schedule a meeting with myself or one of the other AT&T focused advisors, or if you'd like to get into our LinkedIn page to sign up for updates on future webinars and meetings we may have going over AT&T updates and information there. And with that, I'll leave these up here for just a little bit. It looks like I've got two questions I'll jump into, and then I'll let everybody go from there. So the first question looking at here is how long can I have Cobra, and can I change it? Okay. So Cobra, I didn't really go into this too much. Cobra is going to be available for 18 months after separation, and you should be able to change that over to the AT&T unsubsidized. We have to double check with them on that, but once you sign up, you can go ahead and change that. As far as the cost, if you think you're going to be retired for a while, or you're not going to find another job for a while, it's important to review those side by side because I mentioned the unsubsidized AT&T be $1,000 and up for an individual versus the $300 to $500 you might be paying right now. The Cobra's even close to double that in some cases. So it's good to go and get all those numbers from AT&T and look at those side by side and see what those choices and what those options are. Okay, one other question is, am I able to work part-time and get healthcare somewhere else? So we did have that slide, kind of the five choices, and one was going to be get another job and get healthcare. That's honestly going to be kind of case by case situation, depending upon where you're looking. But generally speaking, most firms, I don't know if it's across the board, but generally speaking, most firms that you go to look at, you need to have at least 30 hours a week of employment to be considered eligible for their healthcare plans. So I know I've worked with some individuals where we've done the combination of they were let go of AT&T at 53, so they didn't qualify for age 55 withdrawal rules, and they were looking at making sure that they get their healthcare options. We were able to go to a different company, work a couple years, get those, and then have access to the age 55 withdrawals. Now, with that being said, this thing keeps acting up on me, and I guess it's good timing because that's the last question I've got time for. But again, a quick disclosure: the retirement group, like I said, we worked extensively with AT&T for a long time. Does not mean we're employed by them or endorsed by them, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us because myself and the other AT&T Focus advisors can dig into that in detail with you and really get you the information you're looking for and help you transition to retirement appropriately. Again, you can reach that 800 900 5867. Thank you, and we hope you have a great day.